All right, Exodus 10, let's call this one exemplary versus example, understanding that more and more we're seeing a contrast between Moses and Pharaoh. Pharaoh more and more becoming an example of what not to do. Moses more and more becoming exemplary both before Israel and the people of Egypt. The contrast I think we can start to see in verse 1 of chapter 10, where it reads, "Then the Lord said to Moses, go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine among them." It's not going to stop there, though, because in chapter 11, verse 9, it's going to also read, "Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt," thus making Pharaoh an example clearly of what not to do. Why? Because in contrast, we're going to see what's happening to Moses' reputation in verse 3 of chapter 11, where it says, "And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people." See, Moses is trending up, even as Pharaoh is trending down, as his servants are begging him to give them relief from the plagues. We'll see what they say to him in verse 7 back in chapter 10, where it reads, "Then Pharaoh's servant said to him, how long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined?" And so they need relief, but Pharaoh won't let go of his attempts to oppress Israel. And thus, as he declines, we're going to see one important factor draw a distinction between Moses' ascent and Pharaoh's descent, and that's obedience, something that can be difficult for us to warm up to the less we trust the individual who is asking for our obedience. And in God, a lot of times it can be tough to trust him. But if we understand that he is like a doctor who, if we are getting sound advice, but we ignore that advice, we are watering down the results of what that doctor can do for us. Likewise, God is called the wonderful counselor. And if we go to a counselor and they are giving us wise counsel about our lives individually, our family, or whatever, if we are not following the things that counselor is asking us to do, we are watering down the effects that counselor can have in improving our lives. And this points us back to what we noticed in Genesis 6 with Noah, in the sense that Noah was noted for doing all that God commanded him to do. We said that to the degree we choose to mix what God is telling us to do with what seems clever to us, we are watering down the results. And so likewise, we are now seeing with Moses, someone who is noted for doing all at the high point of his success. Flipping back to chapter 7, it is going to notice this in verse 6. "Moses and Aaron did so. They did just as the Lord commanded them." Contrast Pharaoh, though, in verse 16. "And you shall say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But so far, you have not obeyed." And that's going to be another contrast to what we'll see at the end of the book of Exodus, when in building the tabernacle, it's going to say Moses did all that God commanded him to do. And so neither Noah or Moses are perfect men. None of these people are perfect. But what we're seeing is at the height of their success, like we saw back in Genesis 6, they are striving to do all that God commanded them. And it's going to point forward to a principle we'll see in Deuteronomy, when God is talking about the blessings for obedience in comparison to the curses for disobedience, where it's going to read, beginning in verse 1 of chapter 28, "And if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to obey all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above the nations of the earth." And so what we are seeing is in God's rules, counsel that can help deliver us from watered down peace of mind. That sense that no matter how much I try, there's still something missing, as we talked about on Sunday. And so once again, if we can overcome the temptation to stigmatize God's counsel and start to view it more from the perspective of men like Moses and Noah, we can stop watering down the effects of his wisdom in our lives and hopefully grow more and more into lives that are actually exemplary.